It's 2024 and competition on Airbnb is tougher than ever.
Inventory is really high, demand is lower than it has been, and being a crappy host just won't cut it anymore.
Maybe you're just getting started and you're looking for some tips to get you going, or maybe you are a seasoned host but you've slipped into some bad habits.
Regardless of where you are in your hosting journey, here are 7 tips to keep your short-term rental business thriving.
Our first tip is to fill out your listing thoroughly.
If you're just getting started, chances are you're going to list your property on Airbnb.
Over time, we would recommend getting onto other booking platforms as well and figuring out a solid way to take direct bookings.
But when you're first getting started, most of us are just going to focus on Airbnb because of the exposure that platform brings.
Side note, when you do decide to expand and list on other booking platforms, we still use and recommend uplisting as a channel manager, and you can learn more about that by using the link in the description box below.
One mistake we see new hosts making is just to fill out the bare minimum of the listing sections on Airbnb. But if you do this, you're really doing yourself a disservice.
When you're first setting up your listing on Airbnb, you're going through a series of steps and uploading photos and some basic descriptions. But what a lot of people don't realize that after you're prompted to publish the listing, more fields will open up for you to fill out in the listing editor.
After you hit publish, go back into your listing editor and go field by field and make sure your property is accurately described and there's no fields that are left filled out.
Keywords are increasingly important on Airbnb, so you'll want to make sure that you're including a detailed description of your property, some of your standout amenities offered, and also local attractions.
This is something that we're going to go over in more detail in an upcoming video because Airbnb has completely changed the look and feel of the listing editor, so it's probably time we do a refresh video on how we fill out and populate all these details.
Even if you have an established listing, we'd still recommend going into that listing editor if it's been a while.
Airbnb is constantly adding and updating fields and adding amenities choices, so it's a good habit to get into to check these things out regularly.
Our second tip is to be timely in your messaging replies.
Guests should be getting a response from you within an hour, but ideally a lot quicker than that. Our responses are usually pretty much immediate, at most usually 10 to 15 minutes max.
Guests are often deciding between multiple properties, and so if they're sending out messages to a couple different hosts and you are responding right away, it just demonstrates your professionalism and your communication skills, and they're more likely to choose you over someone who takes an hour to reply.
Messaging can sometimes feel like a burden, and in some ways it is because we're always connected and nearby our phones. But the actual time typing out a message really isn't a big deal, especially when you utilize the quick replies that we have saved.
These are so easy to set up either within Airbnb or on a channel manager like Uplisting if you use one. All you have to do in Airbnb is click the quick reply icon next to an open message, and then you can populate as many as you need for your specific property.
Our most used quick reply is just a thanks for booking message where we keep the content pretty basic, but we'll always edit a couple little details just to make the response more personalized.
And less like a robot.
Beep, boop, bop, zorp.
One thing that we wanted to touch on because we've been asked before, we say that we have responses between 10 to 15 minutes, like hour max, but we're not responding to messages that are not urgent, like in the middle of the night.
We do keep our phones on, notifications allowed for Airbnb in the middle of the night in case there are emergencies, but we aren't sitting there typing out messages when we wake up in the middle of the night.
Tip number 3 is to simplify your check-in process.
This is multifaceted, but what we really want to convey here is you should think of every step a guest needs to go through, get into your house, and then try and simplify that process as much as possible.
This could mean installing smart locks instead of a lock requiring a physical key, and also making sure to provide clear and concise instructions for parking and checking into the house.
Airbnb gives you the option of creating a step-by-step photo check-in guide, and we couldn't recommend you do that enough. One tip here is that you have to do that in the phone app and not on the desktop Airbnb site.
It's very easy to set up. We just take a photo of literally every step from when the guest first arrives on site to when they're opening the front door.
We include some context with each photo step, but we don't include the codes in this check-in guide because those are something that we change regularly. Instead, we send the codes with a message on the check-in day with a link to those check-in instructions.
The guest will have had access on Airbnb to those check-in instructions for a few days prior to their arrival, but not everyone is savvy in the Airbnb app and will notice that. And once again, we're going for the easiest, smoothest, check-in process possible.
Getting a link pasted into the messaging field is a little trick that we use.
And we will leave the base for that web link in the description box below so that all you have to do is plug in your property ID number.
And then you can find that property ID number by going to the listing editor on Airbnb. Then you click the preview button, and then up in the address bar of your web browser, those numbers after the word editor / will be your listing number.
Doesn't seem too hard.
Tip number 4 is to maintain cleanliness and organization.
This may seem pretty obvious and you're asking why we included it in this list, but we've stayed at plenty of Airbnb properties where the host seems to have forgotten this kind of basic principle.
You'll want to make sure that you and your cleaning team are completely on the same page when it comes to expectations about what is included in a standard clean versus more of a deep cleaning.
We also always stress the importance of washing all the bed linens, including quilts or duvet covers, even if they don't look dirty.
We always thought that washing quilts or duvets after every guest was kind of a given, but we've run into some cleaning teams who had the mentality that these pieces of linens only needed to be washed if they were stained or looking dirty. Clarification is key.
The duvet tag shouldn't be at the top left corner.
We also like to make sure that the house is properly reset before every guest, and this means like rearranging anything that might be out of place and organizing the kitchen cabinets.
With most of the cleaning teams that we work with, they are there to clean and not necessarily to organize, which is why we always do a walkthrough of the property after the cleaning teams have finished and before each guest arrives.
We call these perfection inspections, and this is something either we do every time or someone from our team does every single guest check-in.
For our remotely managed properties, we have people that we pay on a per job basis to inspect the house or to just be there and oversee things if some issue comes up.
We've hired neighbors for these jobs before. We found people in Facebook groups, or sometimes your cleaning team might have a manager who could come around after the cleaning team is finished just to kind of be a second set of eyes and tidy things up, keep things organized.
We've had questions before on how much we pay people for this type of a job, and it really depends on the size of the house. We have some small places in San Diego that we were paying around $30 per job, and it would take them like 30 minutes max to go through it. And then we have like the Castle in Albuquerque, we're going to pay a bit more for that because it's a large property. However these inspections get done, the goal here is consistency. We want to make sure that the property is looking exactly like the photos, if not better, for every guest.
It's even better than I thought.
Tip number 5 is to offer local insight.
We have a physical house manual that we keep on site at each property, just a 3-ring binder that we keep on the counter next to the snacks because they're more likely to see it and maybe pick it up.
And then we also have a digital version of this that is web-based that we host on our website.
I have been considering making an editable version of our house manual available. So if that's something that you would be interested, leave us a comment below. And if we get enough interest, we can work on that in the next few weeks.
Your house manual should have answers to all the essential questions about your house. This is another area where you really have to think like a guest would when they're interacting with your house, and then you need to present that in a clear and concise way.
Don't overload them with information or it will just be a too long, didn't read situation. And even though ours is pretty concise and to the point, we still get people who just choose to message us instead of reading what's available to them.
So along with details about how things work in the house, we also like to give some local tips about things to do and our favorite restaurants.
If you are a bit further along in your hosting journey and you have a direct booking website, hopefully with a blog also, then consider printing out 1 or 2 of your favorite blog posts about the area that you've written and just slide that into a page protector inside your binder with a note that they can find more posts like this one on your website.
This is a great resource for guests, and then it's also a signal to go to your website and hopefully book direct next time.
Tip number 6 is to not skimp on basic amenities at your property.
Buying and setting up a short-term rental is expensive and time-consuming, and we get that. And it's really tempting to skimp on some details, but it's really important that you don't when it comes to essential items.
We like to stay at the properties while we're setting them up because then you can really experience the house as a guest would, and you'll immediately notice if there's something missing that you really need while you're there. If you need it, guests will probably need it too.
There are also some extras that we like to see that we wouldn't call essentials, but they're small investments that do make a meaningful impact on the guest experience at your house.
Some examples of this include having a selection of sleeping pillows on each bed, because everybody has their own preference and what kind of pillow they like, or things like adding bedside charging ports and a white noise machine in each bedroom.
We've listed all these items on our sample inventory list, which is the exact list that we use when we set up a new property.
This list is free to access and super easy to use, and it has links to all of the products that we purchase ourselves for our properties. And you can check it out by going to the link in the description box below, or by going to arrivals.com/inventory.
Tip number 7 is to continue to reinvest in your property.
Long gone are the days when you could just throw together a basic property and take basic photos with your phone and have your calendar be full all the time.
STR owners need to continually reinvest in their properties to keep up with the competition when it comes to amenities, but also to just keep up with the quality and standard that you want to have in your house.
Like we mentioned before, our goal with each guest check-in is consistency. So if kitchen amenities are running low, or there's a rug that's stained and needs to be replaced, then it's time to replenish and replace.
If you're a seasoned host and you've noticed a lag in your bookings recently, probably time to take a close look at your amenities and then compare those to competition in your area that is performing well.
Maybe it's time for a design refresh, or maybe it's time to invest in some of those bigger ticket amenities.
If you've seen some of our older videos, you know we have a house in Scottsdale, Arizona that isn't performing lately as well as it has in the past.
It's a great house, it gets great reviews, and guests really love it once they get there, but we just have not seen the booking activity that we have in the past, and we know that it's because our amenities are not matching up to our competitors.
You can go back and watch those videos if you want to hear the whole story, but basically we sort of did a half update to some added amenities a few months ago, and then we kind of backtracked with the intent on selling the property this summer.
And now we've backtracked again, and we've decided we're going to keep the property. We'll explain all of that soon. But with keeping it, we are going to do a full overhaul, totally theme out the place, and add a bunch of value-packed amenities.
We're in the early stages of planning out that effort, and we probably won't execute that until fall. But if you want to keep track of these updates, be sure to subscribe. That's just a few of our tips on how not to be a crappy Airbnb host.
And I'm sure there are some more experienced hosts watching this as well. So if that is you, then go ahead and leave your best tip in the comments so that we can all learn from each other.
If you like this video, please click that like button, and we'll leave another video here on the screen you might want to check out next.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.